Okay. Okay. First item is the CAO would, I just want to fit something in here, an introduction. So the CAO has a new staff introduction for us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to take the opportunity to welcome and introduce Anna McKnight, who is on her very first day as the Marketing and Communications Coordinator for the town. Anna will be joining us, at least in the short term, more than likely in the long term, on a regular basis for council and committee. And we'll be handling the communications strategies and council briefs and press releases for council. And we'll also be working on the larger profile items like the branding that was approved, the website development, and working with the entire organization to build our marketing communication strategies. Just to be clear, Anna does work for the Office of the CAO and not the Director of Recreation, so I want to just make sure that that's well known to everyone on council. So I'd like to encourage council to introduce themselves after the meeting. Anna is has local roots, and we're excited to have her aboard, so thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, our next item is adoption of the agenda. Okay, so moved by Councillor Durley, seconded by Councillor King, that the agenda for the March 18th, 2013 regular meeting of the Policy and Priorities Committee be adopted. Comments or questions? Being none, call the question. Those in favor, opposed, carried. Okay, the next next item is a disclosure of pecuniary interest. Does anyone have any interest? Councillor Papp? No. I have one with item 5.2 regarding the clarification of building permit reserve policy. I work in the local construction industry, so I'll excuse myself for that. Anyone else? Nope. Okay, our next item is a motion from Councillor Durley, seconded by Councillor King, that staff be directed to explore the possibility of equipping snow removal equipment with blades that prevent snow buildup at driveways and report back with their findings prior to the first meeting in September 2013. Comments or questions? Councillor Durley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is brought to my attention by a few residents in town regarding what the possibility of how the road clearing plowing service, which I might add is second to none in the region and probably across Ontario. Your staff does a terrific job at this, there's no question about it. However, the question was, might it be enhanced by the addition of, apparently there is an attachment to the wing of a plow that would cause no pile of snow to be deposited in the front of a driveway when the opening is there. Folks who offered this information were very satisfied, I must say, and I mentioned earlier that the roadways are being cleared well, but their concern is that, you know, after going out and shoveling or otherwise removing the snow from sidewalks and driveways, that the plow passes by and deposits a nice gift in front of them, which takes them probably longer to clean than actually taking the driveway off, and it also causes a challenge in the fact of where do we put this snow? We don't want to impede sight lines, and we don't want to cause any problems for vehicle or traffic, pedestrian traffic. So some residents did say that there are municipalities in and around Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, to say some, and some said that in Alberta somewhere that these things do exist. Also, as close as the GTA, that there is this facility available, or this machinery available to do that. So with the town embarking on the sidewalk clearing initiative in the winter of 2013-2014, it was requested that we investigate the possibility of including this non-driveway deposit feature, if I can call it that, to come in there. So I'm looking at, you know, after allowing my colleagues to offer their valued opinions on this, that I'm prepared to move a staff direction that they explore the possibilities of this and search out about other municipalities using this type of service and get back to us by the September meeting. So if in fact there is a solution that is feasible and affordable, that we can consider it in budget proposal for 2014. And I thank you for the opportunity of bringing this forward.
No problem. Anyone else? Okay, oh, sorry, didn't see other Councillor Pat.
Well, Councillor Durley, I couldn't concur more with you, and I'll have to delineate or take out all the words that I say at the end of my driveway when the snow comes into the driveway. And I have to state that it is, aside from everything else that you have to clear out, if there's definitely a machinery or tool that can do that, let's do it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor Ribbiak?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to say that Viska and I were residents of Saskatoon for 3 years, and I can't remember that people there were any more fond of clearing snow than people here are. So I'm trusting that the equipment is better because there's more snow up there, but I'm not sure it's going to change the mood much.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Kersey.
Mr. Chair, could you clarify the motion? Is it specifically 2014, or, because if it is, I would rather us look at it for the 2013. If we're gonna take the initiative to do the sidewalks, let's make it all encompassing if we can afford it within our budget lines.
I can reread it this for you
If you
if
wouldn't
like.
mind, please.
Yeah, Councillor Durley?
Yeah, I just, in reference to that, we've already, in the 2013 budget, looked at the sidewalk clearing thing, so that's a done deal, and I was thinking that in order to add this now, we would have to make a revision to that, and this is why I suggested that if it comes back by the September meeting, that certainly we can make a consideration for next year, but certainly if it can be done this year, I have no problem with that. I'm just looking at, and I see the treasurer is looking at me with the corner of her eye saying, wait a minute, don't play with my budget. So, this is the reason why I did that, and perhaps we can ask the CAO for a comment on that, and perhaps the treasurer as well. And I was just looking at that for the benefit of staff, because we already have gone through the process of setting the snow clearing budget for 2013. However, if it can be revised, then by all means.
CAO?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Being a recent immigrant from Alberta, I wasn't aware that it had actually snowed here yet. So.
We call the army in here.
I was
Wake
waiting
up
for
with a load on your front lawn.
couldn't figure it out. But in seriousness, it is an important issue. I understand that it's an annoyance for everyone when a plow goes by. I think that there may be alternatives other than just simply having a capital purchase of new equipment or pieces of equipment. There may be ways to achieve this by changing the way in which we clear snow with the equipment that we have. And what I would like the opportunity to do is use our creative problem solving to sit down with key staff and develop a fuzzy situation of how might we not dump snow in people's driveways. And I think that's a great place for us to start. And once we run through that process, I'm confident that we'll have some creative solutions that we can bring back and present to council that could be definitely employed for the 2013 so-called snow year in Ontario.
So all the councillors can refer these snow calls to you then?
Yes. I asked for that, didn't I?
Wide open. Couldn't help myself. Okay, do we need this reread? Councillor Kersey, are we okay where we're at? Or
Could you
just read it again? Sure.
Since there seems to be some amendments.
Yeah, that staff be directed to explore the possibility of equipment, or of equipping snow removal equipment with blades that prevent snow buildup at driveways, and report back with their findings prior to the meeting in September of 2013.
In light of, Mr. Chair, in light of the comments made by our CAO, perhaps I can make an amendment to that might direct the broader issue, and that being, or alternatives to snow deposited on there, which would not say if we don't have the equipment, then we won't do it, but if there are other ways, and certainly the how might we situation would bring light to the fuzzy situation. So I would have no problem either to get this machinery or to do something that would have a no deposit feature on the front of the driveway, if in fact current equipment can do that. If I can make that in the form of an amendment, I certainly would. Just,
Okay,
just,
Councillor Drew.
just allowing more than one option on that, because the way, the
And
way
other
it
options,
reads,
I think.
it says if we don't have the machinery, we won't do it. In fact, if we don't need the machinery and can still get that accomplished, I would have no problem with that, and I think this is where the Councillor Kersey brought that forward. So, in fact, we're looking for a solution to the fuzzy situation rather than to buy a piece of new equipment is the intent of the amendment.
I'd support that.
We have a golden egg on our hands, people.
Yes, please.
So there's an amendment by councillor Durley that the words "or alternatives to snow being deposited in driveways" be added to the resolution after equipping snow removal equipment. So then it would read of equipping snow removal equipment or alternatives to snow being deposited in driveways. So that would be part of the staff's report. That's the amendment proposed.
Okay,
I'll second the amendment.
okay.
We're in committee, so we don't need a second.
Oh, yeah, we're in committee, that's right.
Okay. So now I
Get it
call the
right
question.
Call question on the amendment.
Okay, call the question on the amendment then. Okay, all those in favor, opposed, none, carried. Okay, now on the original.
On the motion as amended.
Okay, and now call the question on the motion as amended. Those in favor, okay, opposed, none, carried. Okay, I have to excuse myself.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor King, seconded by Councillor Durley, that the Policy and Priorities Committee receive the issue sheet regarding clarification of building permit reserve policy for information. Any discussion regarding this matter? Councillor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's all well and good that we receive this report, because it does bring clarity to it. I just wonder what we're going to do about it. Currently, our reserve is at 12.7%, and it appears to me that with the proposal of the fees that we have embarked upon, we'll be making no further change to that reserve going forward unless there's a significant growth in building permits, which I don't think is projected at this point. So do we need to amend the policy, or do we take steps to move closer towards the 40%? Is 40% a realistic number? These are sort of discussions that we should have around this table going forward, and that was the point of asking for that information, so.
So who wants to take a stab at these? Ms. Pupo, we'll start with you regarding the 40% and.
Yes, I was not present at the town as an employee when the policy was written for the 40%. However, the reserve balance should be there for years where there's not foreseeable growth in the future. Given we've had the conversation with the director or the CBO that there is pending growth at the town that's coming, that we don't foresee a shortfall going forward for the next couple of years, and that it's a little bit premature at this time to look at the fees and increasing the fees for the ratepayers given the growth that's coming, and that we would look at it over, I think we said about 2 years' time, to see if either the policy needs to be changed or rewritten, or if the reserve has maintained a balance that meets the policy requirements.
Thank you. So the 40% is there. How does that work? That's a reserve that's set up, and only, I'm just looking for information on this, that only is dipped into when there's a year that the building permits don't cover the cost. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And we don't anticipate that coming this year. Okay. Councillor Kersey, and then Councillor Rubiak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a follow-up, is there a provincial mandate out there that that specifies that that municipalities should establish these reserve funds, or was this an initiative that was taken by the local municipality?
No, this was regulation through the Ontario Building Code Act. When the Act changed in 2006, it gave the municipalities the ability to create these reserve funds.
They're not mandated.
Or it's not a percentage, it's just that we were allowed to create the funds.
I see.
Yeah.
I see.
Okay.
So what the proposition is then from both of you is that we leave the reserve as is, where is, going forward for the next, and monitor it for the next couple of years? Or do you feel like we need to, we're offside with our own policy? So
Right.
should we be modifying our policy in the short term?
It would be my recommendation that the 40% simply be eliminated, that the reserve is established to cover shortfalls, because it's very difficult to reach a number that's in a policy, with a policy being so specific that the procedure could state that, you know, that the town tries to comply with a 40% reserve balance. But if 2012 is any indication, we were projecting a $60,000 deficit, and we ended up with a positive balance, well, a $23 deficit, I think. So in that year where we were projecting the shortfall, we ended up okay. So using that as our premise to move forward, and with the pending growth coming and some of the things that the CBO sees on the horizon for this year, it was the thought that we would monitor it for a couple of years and come back to council with a report at that time.
Okay, thank you. Councillor, anything further?
So for clarity, then, you're suggesting that we modify the policy to remove any specified percentage?
That is an
Jones?
option, yeah.
Is that your recommendation?
Yes, I would recommend that.
Go ahead.
As a further follow-up, reserves will impact, or would have impacted, on building permit fees going forward if we were strictly to stick with the establishment of the 40% reserve, would it not?
Yeah, yes, if you wanted to hit that 40% reserve, then we would have to increase our fees.
Right. So,
Go ahead, Councillor.
so you're projecting that there'll be sufficient enough growth to, such that the building department would not only meet its expenses going forward, that there would be sufficient amount of funds left over that we could then allocate to the reserve going forward, so that we established a reserve that would allow sustainability within your department.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ribbiak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I may have heard an answer to the question, but my question is, so what has been our history with respect to dipping into the reserve? When and for how much? Sounds like we haven't at all, ever. Perhaps to be able
Oh,
to
we
be
certainly
clarified.
have. Ms. Pupel?
We have.
I guess we dipped into the reserve in 2011. I don't recall the 2010, but in 2011 we had a shortfall, 30,000, 20,000, something around there. I could get those specific numbers for you if you'd like. We did use the reserve. Yeah.
Councillor? Do you want those numbers at some point?
Well, my concern was that if there was a history of needing the reserve, then it's worth taking a look at and making a decision with regard to an increase. But what I'm hearing is, yes, we have, but we still have, after that pretty deep dip, some 30,000 in the reserve, and there's no expectation, given growth projections, that we're going to be dipping into it again. So really, it was for information, and I'm getting that information, and I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Pupel?
Just further to that, in 2011, I believe early in 2011, the fees did increase. So we had seen that there was a deficit that was hit in 2010 as well. We knew the fees had to be adjusted, and they were in 2011, and this is probably what's helping mitigate the 2012 and then going forward.
Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm getting the impression that we are in some form of balance. And I guess if the boat isn't rocking, then let's leave it.
Okay, thank you. I think that's what staff are nodding their heads. Councillor Papp?
That is correct. I think the key to all of this is to optimize the amount of monies we need, Councillor, for reserve purposes, particularly in those years in which we are seeing a slowing down of growth. The balancing of the equation of that other side is that, of course, that our building associations and are watching this because they're looking at all fees, development charges, building permits. So we need to be very cautious on how we do not create a disincentive for them. And not to say that it is, but in those years that we were there, Councillor Durley and I were there was no reserve. We just basically ate it within the context of the budget itself. So now we've got this established, and I agree. I would not want to put a maximum amount, because then it just kind of gives the precursor that we're going to automatically increase to reach this 20%, 30%, whatever it is. If it's sufficient to be able to cover off those expenses to cover the budget, fine. And I do agree with the staff, and I think all of us know, we are anticipating quite some significant growth that will help us. And if the message is sent out to the Buildings Association that we're going to hold the line, it'll make things a lot easier to move along, so I concur. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Others? Councillor, Mr. CEO wants to comment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My recommendation to council would be perhaps they should defer this policy back to staff. We can take a look at it and make a recommendation on some amended wording for the next PNP meeting.
Okay,
We're with you on that one.
thank you. Councillor Papp? will
No,
you move that?
I'll move that.
Okay, that we refer it back to staff and come forward with, ask staff to come forward with some recommended wording to modify the policy to match the practice that's being discussed here this evening. Any further discussion to that amendment? There being none, I call the question on the amendment. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Do we have to vote on the major? No. 'Cause it's carried.
No, because you've differed, that's right.
We'll look forward to that coming at a future meeting. Thank you. I would ask Mr. Jennings, can you, Councilor, please? Thank you.
Okay, the next item is a motion from Councillor Durley, seconded by Councillor Kersey, that the issue sheet regarding creative problem-solving implementation plan be received, and that the Policy and Priorities Committee direct the mayor to schedule a special meeting so that participants can present their work, council can discuss the recommendation action plans, and approve actions plans so that they can be executed, and that committee consider how the work presented aligns with the town's adopted strategic plan and make any necessary adjustments. Comments or questions? Mr. Mayor?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So this very detailed report is the work of some councillors, but many staff, the senior staff of the town, working together to look at some of the challenges that we face. So how might council make better and quicker decisions within council was one of the ones that Councillor Durley, Kersey, and myself worked on along with some other members of staff. How might we continually improve customer service and serve the people of the town better was one that staff worked on, a staff group. And another was how might we devise a method for council, the public, and staff at all levels to identify golden eggs being those problems or opportunities that are out there that need to be solved, like the one we spoke about earlier about snow clearing. It was a 5-day, as it's stated here, a 5-day process of level 3 training, and came up with a very detailed plan that was put together by all, and each of those 3 groups put together their own plans, and then they were incorporated together on the last day. There are some implications here, or some potential implications for council, in the way that council works together with the community, getting the community very, very significantly involved in decisions of council. And maybe Councillor Durley and Councillor Kersey can comment on this, but as we spoke about it, we wanted to ensure that certainly colleagues around the table would feel before adopting these that what the ramifications were or could be, or what the potential would be, or indeed if there's some other methods or approaches that could be taken. That's why the recommendation is here that a special meeting be called. I have in my mind that maybe we can do it next Monday and run it like a committee meeting and organize and have the problem-solving process to help us work our way through some of the issues. So I don't know if colleagues around the table that were involved in the process want to comment further, and certainly I know the CAO would probably want to comment on the process as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Councillor Durley?
To build upon the comments already given to this debate, an attempt to explain in detail all of the details that the extensive training offered by Dr. Bassiter and the Simplexity staff in a short time frame that's allowed at a PMP meeting would be impossible, and I don't think it would give justice to the matter, nor would it allow members to fully understand or to ask questions that no doubt will come forward from that. So I think the best possible way to approach this is to bring council as a whole together in a committee of the whole meeting, and we could go over the results of the whole process of the level 3 training, and certainly we'll reflect on level 1 and level 2 as well, because it was, it's been a month and a half or 2 months that training has taken place, and senior staff has become very well versed in the process, and we're using it quite successfully in many facets of the work that they do day to day, and certainly council will benefit from this, and I think it would be, we would be remiss if in fact we didn't give proper time to bring this all forward, and I think the only way we can do this is through a special meeting, and I agree 100% with the mayor, but I think we should give direction that we call a meeting, and if in fact next Monday is the date that is acceptable to all, then certainly that's it. But I think as soon as possible, if we can get this forward, that way, in fact, I believe we would require council's buy-in in order to go forward with this process. So in fact, until we can convince council or tell council exactly the benefits of this, and in fact, if council agrees that it is of great benefit, that once this is established, that we can pass a resolution and go forward with the whole principle, the whole process in that. So to that fact, I have made the motion and I fully support it. The great amount of information that is available, I would really like to share, and I'm sure that all of my colleagues would like to hear it all. And once hearing it all, I think they will see the benefits of the process. And I thank you for the opportunity of bringing this forward.
Okay. Anyone else? Councillor Kersey?
Yeah, I would just like to echo my colleagues' comments and add a couple of things. Basically, it was 5 days of hard work, but it was 5 exciting days with the material that came out of it. And truly, if council, you endorse this and you underwrite this, this council will, and senior staff, all staff for that matter, will not only become perhaps the most innovative council and staff in Ontario, certainly our community will become the most innovative community in Ontario. We will be the leaders of the pack. We will set a very, very high standard for other communities to have to strive for. And so I heartily endorse my colleagues' motion for a specially called meeting. And I am sure when you come from that meeting, you will be as excited about the entire process and what it can bring to the table and bring to this community as those of us who are involved in the process are.
Okay. Any amendment to call a question for set a time for next Monday?
We could call for an amendment to add the date.
Is there any further comments or questions? Okay, now I need someone to make an amendment, or can I do that?
If they,
We don't have to pick the date now. I can just circulate it and find a date that works, unless it's okay with everybody. I don't know if Councillor King, for instance, you're shaking her head, or I don't know if she's, so we can just do that offline. We don't have to do that.
Okay, we don't have to do this right now.
Maybe I
Okay.
shouldn't have pointed her out. I apologize, Councillor.
Oh. Councillor Papp?
Be very brief. I went through this very comprehensive, and I know you've been all well-trained and as well with staff. It's always important that if we embrace this process, that it's also understood by the general community, how this engagement and collaboration works in its most basic and simple form. So I would say that when we set the time aside to go through all of this, that we make enough time so that we fully, forgive my expression, but we capiche the whole thing from beginning to end, and that how would it apply to any issues that come before council, because that's what I understand, that from a, you want to call it clinician's point of view, this will be the new protocol that is used, and the adaptive protocol that no matter what the issue, big or small, is something that our general community and ourselves would be familiar with and would feel comfortable doing. Because it's great for us internally, and I'm not putting it down at all. I just want to make sure that also our, I'm going to say, our shareholders, the people that look after us, are also completely compliant and understand fully, which I think they will. So whether it takes 3 hours or 5 hours, I'm willing to set. I'm sure all of us are willing to set the time aside so we understand it. Once we adapt it, that's what's going to be invested in this, because this sets the framework for futures, as I understand it, Mr. CEO, Mr. Mayor, right? And how we'll be
does.
conducting business and the raison d'etre that we'll use to complete this. Correct? Thank you.
Okay. So we're just leaving this the way it is. Okay, so any further comments or questions? Councillor Ribbiak?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also want to endorse the suggestion that we meet in order to look at this thing. I think that there's a tremendous effort being made to embed constructive problem-solving into the culture of this organization. And I think that makes us probably, if not unique, at least within a sliver of behaviors in town staffs that deal with issues like this one. So I think this is a really positive step forward. I too have read through all of these pages and really wish that I had been there, or half of me wished that I had been there. The other half said, gee, I'm glad I didn't spend all those hours at it and that somebody else did. But this was excellent work. I would like to discuss it further. I do think that we need to have a meeting that is indeed open to the public, and the public should know that we're having it. So if they want to come and listen to the discussion, I think that would be extremely useful. And I think that some degree of participation on our behalf as this thing proceeds is going to be very useful in ensuring that we are completely not only understanding but supportive of the outcome. So yes, let's have that meeting, let's have it soon, and let's give ourselves enough time to go through it thoroughly.
Okay. Councillor King?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would just like to clarify the comment that was made earlier. I do not want it to be misconstrued that I am not interested. That would be far from the truth. As we all know, I do work on a full-time basis, and I rely on that salary. So at times, I do have conflicts in my schedule, which may or may not prevent, or may not allow me to be present on a work day. So it certainly is not because I have no interest. I think it's a wonderful program. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to participate and to take 5 days out of my work schedule to be a participant in this. But I am certainly endorsing it and would love to be a part of it going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor King.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can I just apologize to Councillor King? I wasn't trying to say that you weren't interested, just that it may be difficult to schedule, and I appreciate your comments, and again, I apologize to you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, I call the question. All those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. Okay, our next item is a motion from Councillor Ribbiak, seconded by Councillor Papp, that the issue sheet regarding delegation of powers and authority policy be received, and that staff be directed to prepare a policy regarding the delegation of powers and duties for consideration at the next regular Policy and Priorities Committee meeting scheduled for April 15th, 2013. Comments or questions? Mr. CAO?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, as was mentioned at the regular council meeting, this was scheduled to be presented to council at this meeting. We didn't want it to fall off the radar because obviously it is an issue. So the clerk graciously put this information forward, kept it on the agenda, just so you're aware. We simply didn't have time to complete it onto the deadline that we had wanted to, but we're pretty confident that we'll be able to finish that for the next PNP meeting and have that to you for consideration.
Anyone else? Okay, call the question then. All those in favor? All opposed? Carried. And the next item is a motion from Councillor Ribbiak, seconded by Councillor Papp, that policy council/07 council photograph policy be maintained and renumbered as P201-05. Comments or questions? Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a comment. One of the things that we've done this term, and I think the new chamber has allowed us to do that, is include on the outside of the chamber a picture of the current council. I don't know whether that needs to be added to the policy or not. So I I could add it.
If you want
that
to,
we
yeah.
Sure, let's make that amendment that we also
Well, the three amigos are out there. So.
include a picture of the current council on the outside of the council chamber as a way of welcoming in, really, in essence, Mr. Chair, the community to the council chamber.
Any further comments or questions? On the amendment?
Done.
Okay, seeing none, so I call a question on the amendment. Those in favor, those opposed? Okay, now the original motion. Oh, sorry, Councillor Gurley.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering if we could further amend that to say that not only will a picture be put there, that members of council be given a copy of each picture for posterity's sake. You know, it's an honor to be here representing the municipality. It's an honor to be elected to do that, and I, for one, would value such a photograph in my office to say, okay, I was part of this unique group and this very knowledgeable and great group of people that made some great decisions. And you know, I would like that to be added. That you know, for a very minimal cost, it would be just to reproduce these pictures. That each member of council be awarded one of these photographs.
Okay. Anyone else? Any other questions, comments? We're gonna do
you
an
have that.
amendment again.
Yeah, that's an amendment. Call the question on that.
Call the
amendment.
question on Councillor Durley's amendment. All those in favor? Carried. And now the original question,
As amended.
as amended, sorry. Okay, calling the original, okay, you have a question or?
No, I'm responding to your call.
Okay, so calling the question on this?
Yes.
Carried. Okay, our next item is a motion from Councillor Papp, seconded by Councillor Kersey, that Policy Council /08, recognition of community service be rescinded and replaced by a municipal volunteer policy. Comments or questions? Mr. Mayor?
Timing of that other policy?
Sorry?
Timing of that other policy. We're going to rescind this policy. What's the timing of the other policy coming forward to be recommended to council?
No. Mr. Sullivan.
Mr. Chair, I would suggest that we could have this done by the next P&P meeting. I don't believe there's any recognition requirements between now and then, so council could choose to rescind this policy tonight, or you could decide to do it next P&P meeting, rescind the policy and adopt the new draft if you see fit. It's up to you and how you want to do it. It's 6 in one, half dozen in the other, as they say.
Yeah,
Let's do it all.
let's do it all at one time. So I postpone this and I make that amendment that I postpone this until that other policy comes forward.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on the amendment? None, ask the question on the amendment. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And now we do
Just
this,
right
or?
here, just postpone. Thank you.
Next item is a motion from Councillor Papp, seconded by Councillor Kersey, that Policy Council /09, remembrance of former members of council be maintained and renumbered, E201-06. Comments or questions?
Move it.
Okay, seeing none, ask.
Chair?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Well, we did have this, obviously this evening, and we did have a moment of silence. And I wondered if, I think that should be added to the policy as well. The council will respect the service of the individual with a moment of silence.
Okay,
So I'll make that amendment.
that amendment, okay. We have that then? Okay, so call the question on the amendment. All those in favor? Carried. Now, on the original,
As amended.
as amended. All those in favor? Carried. Our next item is a motion from Councillor Kersey, seconded by Councillor Papp, that policy council /10 non-owned liability coverage be rescinded. Comments or questions? Councillor Kersey.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to perhaps our CAO. I wondered, most people with their liability insurance policies have a deductible. And if they are using their vehicles for the purposes of town business, well, I understand that a reliance on their liability policy. I wondered if we should incorporate something into the policy to at least cover off the cost of their deductible.
CAO?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. After speaking with our insurer, the very clear direction on that was no, and this policy should definitely be rescinded. Instead, if there was an issue where there was a deductible being paid by an individual because of their requirements to use the vehicle for work, it is recommended that would be dealt with on a case-by-case basis, and that you'd have to go through the following the appropriate investigation and get the proper reports, and then it would be a specific request for a specific instance for a refund, rather than having a standing policy.
Councillor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just as a follow-up, would that be developed inside of a procedure that staff would be made aware of, or not?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't believe it would be a procedure because there would be no policy to support it. I think it's just a case by case. What do I do? I got an accident. I've got a $500 deductible. I think the town should pay for it. Okay, fair enough. Put together an issue sheet with the appropriate documents, send it to council, and they can look at it and decide what they want to do.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other further questions? No, seeing none, call the question. All those in favor, opposed, carried. Okay, our next item is a motion from Councillor Kersey, seconded by Councillor Papp, that policy council /11, use of private sector funds be rescinded. Comments or questions? Councillor Durley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one, perhaps a house cleaning, like, we no longer deal with mill rates, we deal with tax rates, and this happened since Bill 28298 came in. So the first word of the revised statement, which is in order to try and maintain acceptable ceiling on municipal mill rates, perhaps if we can change that to tax rates. It's a minor factor, but in fact, we don't do mill rates anymore, we do tax rates, and I think that just cleans it up a bit.
I'm not sure where you are with that.
We're rescinding it.
Mr. Chairman, the recommendation is to rescind.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The
I
entire
misunderstand.
policy. It's the opinion of staff that this is a antiquated policy that no longer is relevant to today's reality, and that as has been indicated, we've got other modern policies that cover this off where appropriate, but to simply suggest that we're going to be out shaking the trees for money to offset taxes is just not a practice that we would want to be involved with.
Thank you. My eyes must have been getting weary at the time. My apologies.
I agree.
Thank you.
I see where you get it. Okay, any further questions or comments? Councillor Ribbiak?
Thank you. I suppose we should understand that rescinding this policy doesn't mean that we are not going to accept such donations as are made in memoriam, for example, or sponsorships for other things. Perhaps the CAO can just comment on some of the ways in which we will continue to invite public participation in initiatives of the town, that this doesn't kill those.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To respond to the councillor, yes, in fact, there are three particular policies that I'll highlight. One is procurement policy. Second one is a policy on issuing charitable receipts. And as far as fundraising goes and donations for memorial purposes and whatnot is very clearly covered under the naming of corporate assets policy. So I would not suggest that we wouldn't be willing and able to accept donations or to embark on fundraising opportunities. It's just that we have much better mechanisms with these policies to do that, as opposed to a blanket policy that says that we're just going to go out and shake people down for money because we don't want the taxes to go up.
Any problem with that is?
It's a golden egg.
Sorry, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I'm just wondering from the CEO then, how would a sponsorship for a summer festival or whatever, where's that covered? Is that in one of those three policies that you talked about?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Donating to an event like Summerfest is not it's not a town fundraising program. It's an independent thing that the Summerfest committee does. But if there are donations made, like for example the skateboard park, that would be covered under the charitable receipts policy, so that we would certainly be able to facilitate fundraising for a group like Summerfest, or we would be able to accept donations to a cause like the skate park, and we do have the policy on issuing tax receipts in those instances.
Okay. And so I appreciate that answer. I guess also thinking of something like a gift in kind. So there's been call for certain businesses to help out with certain things like a trail system or perhaps a skate park, or to offset costs that way, that it would be a gift in kind. So how would that be handled and under which policy?
Ask Carrie to handle that one.
Okay.
I believe that the in-kind donations are covered under the procurement policy. They're quoted in that policy, and also under our charitable receipts policy, where we accept those gifts and issue charitable receipts for them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Do we have any further questions or comments? Okay. Seeing none, I call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, our next item is a motion from Councillor King, seconded by Councillor Durley, that Policy and Priorities Committee receive the issue sheet regarding a municipal volunteer policy for information. Comments or questions? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, our next item is a motion from Councillor Durley, seconded by Councillor King, that this regular meeting of Policy and Priorities be adjourned until the next regular meeting, being the Committee of the Whole, scheduled for Tuesday, April 2nd, 2013, unless sooner called by the mayor. Comments or questions? Call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Sorry? Okay, our meeting is adjourned. Thank you.